Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of My Understanding. I appreciate you guys coming back in and tuning in. I want to also thank Corinne here for being a lovely guest. We've got a special one today. She's a good friend of mine, as is her husband. I actually met him at the place that we used to work at, Lifetime. I guess I still technically do work there, but but yeah. So they are some very amazing people, very close to me, and she works in the mental health field and is just an incredible person. And so I'm really grateful that you were willing to hop on today. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Sure. So my name is Corinne Brodnicki, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist primarily. So I've been doing that since 2011. So this is year 15 already. And currently I have a private practice. That's where I see most of my clients. I work with littles. I've got 5-year-olds all the way up to 65-year-olds, men, women, kids, couples. I kind of run the gamut, but I primarily work in the areas of anxiety, it seems like, and parenting support and or behavior management for younger kiddos. So I also teach at Jessup Christian University over here. I teach in the master's program, so I get to mold developing therapist minds as well, which is a humongous honor.
That's incredible. How long have you been doing that Jessup thing for?
2019, I think. So the program is a baby still. It's only been, I think they started in 2018. So I've been there the whole time, which has been a really big privilege. I feel every time I teach, I'm so underqualified for this, but they keep asking me to teach. So I guess something's going okay.
You're like, I guess I'm doing something right.
Something. Fooling everybody at least.
Well, you're really good at it then. No, that's actually really cool. I think that, oddly enough, I don't ever realize that you had taught at Jessup, though.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I have a lot of friends, actually, or I shouldn't say a lot, but I have a few friends that also teach over at Jessup, so that's really cool.
It's a good community. Yeah.
It is, I agree. And it's a very small world, too, so. Well, sweet. Well, one of the questions that I have for you, then, is just kind of diving into your field of work is, what do you feel like is something that a lot of people misunderstand about like therapy or therapists?
Wow. I think people really underestimate the value, and that's probably not a huge shock, but I think people really think like, I don't really need to go to therapy. I don't really have any issues going on. But the reality is, we all have a history of brokenness from our childhood. And even if you had lovely, wonderful parents, you still have maladaptive thought patterns, behaviors that were developed because we live in this broken world. And just coming to therapy to unwind some of those things can give you such a higher quality of life. And I think people really often are content to like, that's, it's fine. It's good. I'm getting by. And, or some people don't even realize that they're getting by, and they haven't even been able to tap into their full potential because they're weighed down by things, these kind of invisible anchors sometimes that they don't even realize they have. So I would say anybody can benefit from it, especially if you're married, and, or a parent. These are two things there's lots of books about, but most people aren't having anyone hold their hand while they're going through either of these humongous relational experiences, and they're both difficult, and so some support along the way. Just my thought is like it makes your life easier and smoother, and like I said, I think it gives you a higher quality of life. And most therapy is very easy in the sense of all therapists I know are like the loveliest people, and their offices are very comfortable and safe, and it might be uncomfortable at the beginning, but the clients that come through my doors are generally enjoy, I think, their experience. They keep coming back, though.
Yeah. So it's a similar to Jessup thing. You got to be doing something right. Okay, that's very cool. Yeah, it's interesting that you had specified relationship and parental idea of therapy is. I think for me growing up, therapy was never something that was like talked about really in my family, especially. Is like it was very much just you deal with it, you suck it up, you continue to move on. And like I'll admit, like I had a very loving family. I think I was one of those people where I feel like I was raised in a good household. But even still, my dad, having been in the military, very much kind of drilled into us like, you're a man, you deal with your emotions, you just kind of shove them aside, and you make do. But yeah, now that I have my lovely wife, she has very much opened my eyes to, okay, no, therapy is like a very real thing. Yeah. And it is. I think once you start going, it's, from my perspective, it's something you almost have to want to do. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it doesn't work very well if somebody doesn't want it to.
No, because I am your passenger in the car. If you don't want to drive where I'm inviting you to go, then what use am I to you? And we're not going to be able to go where I think it might be good for you to go. But you're still in charge. You're the driving force, not intended, but well fitted. And, absolutely. So when I get clients that come in because of a spouse, a partner, a parent, there really has to be buy-in for there to be change. But it doesn't have to be a lot of buy-in in the beginning, because usually people start to see the positive benefit if they're even a little bit open, and then they find it to be worth it.
Mm-hmm. And that's really cool. And I assume you've seen probably a lot of it. I feel like it can be a very rewarding field when you see that change in your clients. Absolutely.
And sometimes that's weekly. Sometimes that's not every session, but every week, every day that I'm working. It's feedback from clients that will say things like, "You have just helped us so much." I hear this more often with couples, and it really is. And I always have to tell them, I'm just here to kind of be your sounding board and organize what you're throwing at me, and helping to reorganize it and present it back to you in a way that allows you to make the changes that are necessary. And so I'm just really, like I said, I'm a glorified guide with a lot of training.
Yeah.
And the client is doing the majority of the work. So it's very rewarding. Absolutely.
Well, that's very cool. And I'm glad to hear that it's also something that you enjoy doing, because I feel like if you enjoy doing it, you're going to be a lot better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone actually not in the therapy field said one time, a long time ago, they said, "Isn't it so awesome that you get to do this work that, is so impactful?" And I was like, yeah, it really is. I actually know you're making a difference in people's life, and to confidently have information and tools and tricks that are going to help people is really empowering myself. So,
yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. I would say I can relate to that in a different aspect, just with the whole personal training business. Like I feel like it's two sides of the same coin,
Yes. And I would say also a highly underutilized health tool. It's very similar, actually, now I think about it. So my husband is a personal trainer at heart and is doing work, even though his paid job is different now. But we talk about it a lot, these parallels, because you can walk into a gym and think you know what you're doing, and I imagine you guys see these people all the time when you're at the gym, that they're doing all the things, and in your mind you're probably like, that's not really gonna get you anywhere, or you're not, and all you need is a guide to say like, hey, let's tailor it to this and this and this, and then we can be effective with this growth. So they're very similar, the mind and the body.
Yeah. It's almost like they're, one in, they're conjoined in a way.
Yes.
Well, so I'm curious then, kind of going off of what we've been talking about a little bit here, with all of the clients that you have kind of had and worked with, what do you feel like is one lesson that maybe your clients have taught you over the years? I realize that's a pretty, big question, so there's no rush.
I think one thing that comes to mind is sometimes simple is all you need, which I imagine this translates beautifully in your world too. It doesn't really take... So the reality for anxiety management, for example, is anxiety is your very natural physiological response that's just overreactive in essence. That's what anxiety is. It's saying my fight, flight, freeze, all of those things are responding when they don't necessarily need to. So, and that's largely driven, and I would argue mostly driven by your thought process. And so it's as simple as saying, hey, if we can get you to start thinking differently in those moments when you're anxious, you can change this anxiety and, in fact, eliminate it. It can be eliminated fully. Now, it's not that. It sounds very easy. Wow. It's very simple, but it's very difficult because we're kind of fighting our biology in those instances. But I've learned it doesn't really have to be this complicated endeavor. We can start with the basics, and that usually is enough to really make some massive changes. I've dug really far into cognitive work, like more specifically cognitive processing work. And which is what I'm talking about. This idea of, hey, if we can just capture thoughts or even just observe them and realize like, I don't really want to go down that road. You can heal depression. You can heal anxiety. You can heal, which honestly, if you can manage your thinking differently, you can address trauma that you've had. You can address core beliefs that are crappy. It's really powerful. So I think just watching clients do some really simple things to have big outcomes is rewarding as well. So that's something that comes to mind, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge, honestly. That is, I don't think that's, what am I trying to say here? I think that is really an incredible thing, and I think it's very accurate because it's not always the complicated answer. It's not always the, you have to give 100%. Sometimes it's like, okay, hey, it's this very simple answer, and you do need to give as much as you can, but it's a very simple answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that. That's really cool. Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to somebody today as well about just like his experience with like panic attacks and things like that. And he is somebody who is very active. And so it was an interesting conversation of how fitness and being active can help kind of limit how much of those attacks can happen.
Yeah. So, if you ever see a video of like a gazelle, a more helpless, like Serengeti animal, after they've been chased by the cheetah, but the cheetah doesn't get them, if you happen to see a video, they like have this big, like shaking attack, and then it's kind of like this freeze shake where they're releasing all their cortisol, and then they just get up, they just pop up and just walk like it was no big deal. So when you're dealing with anxiety, especially panic attacks, so panic attack is just an overwhelming amount of anxiety, not even necessarily physically. I don't know that you're having a wildly higher amount of cortisol coursing or adrenaline coursing through your veins. I think it's the relationship you're having with that experience in your mind that really makes it a panic attack. But that's a question we come back to. The point being, if you can exert some of that energy with intention, then you can allow the cortisol to move more coolly through your body. So what happens with anxiety is you have an experience, something scares you or triggers you. You get the shot of adrenaline, cortisol, and then if it's something like, let's say you hit the brakes and then you're like, okay, everything's fine. Your systems will reset. It still takes, I've read, like 20 minutes, but it will reset. And because in your mind you're like, there's no threat. If you've never been triggered or had any sort of trauma around driving, then your body will just reset and you won't even think twice about it. So what happens when you get stuck in a cycle of anxiety, which then potentially leads to a panic attack, is you have that rush of emotion, then you get freaked out by that rush of adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah.
Then you get freaked out about that, so then you get another rush, and so you're just like pop, 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 pop. So if you can, and imagine like all of that, that's where people are like, I'm shaking, I can't, which that could be your body, it's trying to release it. It could be like, I can't sleep, my heart's racing, whatever. So if you add some physical activity to that, it gets all the things pumping, the blood flowing, whatever, then your body can process through that stuff rather than it just sitting in your body. Like a really poor option would probably be to just go sit on the couch if you're highly anxious. It would be a lot harder for you to, it's a little bit harder. It's not impossible, and sometimes that could be the thing to do. But generally, yes. So fitness is a really good coping tool as long as you're doing it saying like, here, I'm going to just allow my body to kind of work through this and express it regardless of the outcome. Because as soon as you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go run, which I've done this too. I have my own journey with anxiety, so I'm very familiar with all of what works and what doesn't. Is I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go run this out. And then I would get back from a run and I wouldn't feel totally regulated. And then I would get a little more anxious again. But you say like, you know what, I'm going to go on this run because I know this is going to be really good for my body. I'm not going to worry about how I feel when I get back. Then it will actually help the process. So using it for the right thing rather than like, I've got to use it to fix it, but like, you know what, I'm going to use this to pair with, I'm going to help my body like speed up that, or at least cue the relaxation, the sympathetic system.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a potential. This might be a dumb question, and I'm not sure, but because I know that when it comes to those overwhelming like feelings, where you like you were mentioning, you start shaking.
Yeah.
What is the difference between somebody's response when it comes to they begin shaking versus somebody who almost like starts to disassociate? Because I know like some people when they go into like shock, it reacts differently. Some people, it's like they're immediately, hardwired. They're just running. They're extremely hyper focused, and other people like panic and they don't know how to handle it. And so, what is the difference then there between somebody who is kind of calm and collected when they have maybe that overwhelming feeling? Like, is that something that can happen where it's like, hey, they're having so much anxiety that their body almost like goes into shock? I don't know if that's right.
Well, one of the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn system is I fight, right? I want to literally, that could be, I get angry, I physically fight. Okay. Flight is I'm going to run away from this. Freeze is what I think maybe more of what you're talking about, this kind of like total shutdown. And then fawn, which most people don't really know about, is when you're overly pleasing in order to satiate or to manage the anxiety. So that would be like, I'm triggered by a controlling so-and-so, and so when they start getting controlling and I started getting anxious, then I just give in to whatever they say. So that's a fawn. A freeze person, I think, is kind of that dissociated. I don't know what to do. I've been conditioned either to not have a voice or to not be able to do anything, or I have a lot of trauma from childhood where I wasn't able to. You just kind of, sort of shut down, disconnect. They're hard to reach. But that's your body's, that's a whole different, they're all protective measures. That's just keeping you from feeling all of the crap, which I've never did, but it seems like that would be very similar to the shock kind of, like when you have experienced shock. I wonder if it's a similar physiological process. I don't know, but
interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, that's something. Yeah, I'm curious about that. Then that'd be because I've heard of how like your body will react certain ways to help like protect itself, and so that is really cool that you're able to have those three different forms. And it was been a long time. I hadn't learned about fawn until actually very recently as well, and so it's kind of cool that I feel like I agree with you. I think that's the one thing that a lot of people aren't familiar with is that third option that your body has to try and protect itself.
Yeah.
So I want to Yeah, man, the body is just wild. So I want to take one quick step back into what we were talking about just before I went on that, and we were talking about how exercise is a great way to help kind of regulate your emotions. What would you say, what role do you think it plays in like stress regulation and being able to help process your emotions? Like, how is it something that you recommend to your clients pretty often, or like what for, the average person, how important do you think it is for them to incorporate some form of exercise to help with that?
Well, it is. I mean, sleep, exercise. We have to take care of the foundation, because all of those things. A healthy body powers the mind, right? So an unhealthy body. For example, I know you're asking about fitness, but sleep deprivation. You can have sleep deprivation-induced psychosis. I mean, just because you haven't slept. So, which I think, I don't know about psychosis, but I think is a big part of the postpartum issue for women after they have babies is they are so sleep deprived that things start getting really disorganized in their brain. So one thing I thought of, number one, it's fitness is good. A regular rhythm of managing your body is really good. But something also, you've probably noticed this, but if you're ever going to walk with somebody, conversation, although you're a very good conversationalist, so you might not notice it. But let's say you're on a walk with my husband, who tends to be quieter. You get somebody like that on a walk, and they start chatting a lot more. There's something really beautiful happening with the cadence of moving. It's a bilateral stimulation in that way. The walk, and we, what is this? Sway a little bit, back and forth. So if anyone's familiar with EMDR, that's kind of the whole baseline of that trauma work is this like rapid eye back and forth. So you're stimulating. All that to say, that can be really healing. It can be a really great tool for processing. A person could go on a really good walk with intention and like, what, my intention here is to kind of process this thing. I'm going to think about whatever. And they could get to a really cool place of closure by the end, or, an answer, whatever it is. So even just our body is wired to move, and moving heals, right? That's just like one example. You probably have even more. So I find though that, even walking is really hard. Getting people out and moving even a little bit, really difficult. But I know I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I can't think of a lot of the other like direct benefits, other than, I imagine it helps your cortisol stay more regulated. I know so I can speak from experience. When I was going through, I had like a good handful of years of like pretty high anxiety, waking up at 4 a.m., like just bad. And my husband was like, you need to exercise. And it actually was a really great way to start the day, because I would always wake up with a lot of energy, a lot of anxious energy. And it was a really good way to kind of start my day with processing through that. So I didn't finish the exercise, like I said earlier, and just say, I'm no problem, I feel fine. But it did, I think, take a significant edge off of that. And also, my thought was like, if I've got all this energy, then no better way to I got energy to work out when I maybe don't want to. So it's twofold. And then I would listen to a podcast, especially when I would go running. I would be outside. So mindfulness when you're exercising, especially outside, is really beautiful. So there's a few thoughts.
Just basically just trying to get the body moving in one way or another, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, an idle body can really not be good. It can really be tricky for your brain. Like it just, when you're, I know I keep coming back to anxiety, but when you experience that moment of anxiety, another thing that kind of happens is you can mentally kind of go really inward. Like, I'm really focused on what I'm feeling. I'm really focused on what I'm thinking. But if you can kind of tune out, then that kind of disrupts that. You can't
Gotcha.
like highly focused on counting leaves on a tree, or like I'm going to go on this walk and I'm going to count my steps, and also focused on whatever the anxious noise is.
Yeah.
So it's also a good tool for mindfulness, which is a really good mental health tool, period.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your insight on that. That's, yeah. We have a saying in like the industry where it's like, if you don't move it, you lose it. When it comes to just like muscle and like your health is a generalized thing. And I sometimes I'm like, I always wonder, I wonder if it's like similar to like the mental aspect, where it's like, if you're not actually training like your mind, if you're not really working on your emotional state and trying to regulate these things regularly, then you become less good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
When people tell me, and I hear this way more from men, when people tell me like, oh, I'm not really emotional, or I'm just so regulated, or I'm just so even keel.
I would never say that. Never. No.
Yeah. So sometimes that is a really regulated person.
Yeah.
Sure. There are definitely people out. But most of the time when I hear that, what I'm hearing is I'm emotionally disconnected from myself. And because of that, I've got that door shut. So it's really easy to stay kind of in this lane. I'll probably get angry sometimes because it'll spill out the door. We are emotional beings. That is a part of how we were created. And if we're not allowing that door to be open and integrating with all of these other beautiful parts of us, then there's going to be a handicap somewhere. And it often impacts relationships. Like it just leads to maladaptive relational functioning.
Yeah. So, kind of a follow-up question regarding that then. Is there a way that you can kind of tell if somebody is emotionally burnt out versus maybe like physically exhausted or like, sleep deprived?
I think they're also interwoven. That's the thing. Physical exhaustion could lead to mental exhaustion. Mental exhaustion could lead to physical exhaustion. I think they just are married together. I think you'd be hard pressed to find one solely divorced from the other.
Gotcha.
Unless you're, like I said, completely disconnected from your emotions, and then that's a different thing.
So just basically somebody who, kind of like you were saying, feels like they have no need for their emotions because they're always composed, is more than likely also experiencing probably one of two of both of these other things then. Yeah,
you said it actually really perfectly. I'm so composed. I don't need to process any emotion. It's like, well, it's there. It's absolutely there. And it cannot not impact you. It impacts you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You just might not be aware of it. But you could probably ask your significant other, your best friend, and they might be able to tell you where it is.
That whole outside perspective really helps in those situations. Gotcha. Well then, so kind of on that outside perspective, what would you say are like some subtle signs when somebody's stress levels are getting too much? Because I'm sure that they probably show up differently for most people, but I would also assume that there's probably, and again I could be wrong, but I would imagine there's probably at least like some pretty common ones that you have seen.
So before I answer that, you might have to ask the question again if I forget. Okay. I do want to say this one really cool thing called, resiliency is a cool thing too. That's our ability to bounce back. But distress tolerance is the ability we have to tolerate distress. And that actually, in our world, we call it the window of tolerance. Like, how much what's my cap to where I'm no longer functioning well? Mm-hmm. But that you can build that. Like, you can stretch that. So if somebody is constantly stressed, then there are ways to like increase that tolerance for stress. By the way, we don't have to go there right now, but I just want to say it's cool how our bodies can adapt, right? And we don't want to ignore it to the point where we're just like, oh, I'm so stressed, but I don't do anything about it. So
yeah,
I remember the question. So sleep issues, irritability, probably one of the biggest ones. Kind of becoming reclusive if they're able, or whenever they can. Like I'm just withdrawing from the people and the things. Inability, like concentration issues, inability to accomplish things, get stuff done. Basically, when you're overstressed, it's kind of like your system is like electrocuted. Kind of. It's like I cannot do all of the things I'm supposed to do. Your brain is not wired at a certain point. There's this cool bell curve where like the right amount of stress is really beneficial, right? That's what pushes you to do hard things. That's what's going to push you to keep do another set. Like,
yeah.
But then you crest that, and now it's maladaptive, and that's when we start getting unhealthy. And so we're trying to ideally like minimize the cresting of that, and that's where we just kind of shut down. So I would say like the answer to that would be, well, what does it look like when you shut down? And I think that's a really good thing for people to check in with themselves about and have an awareness of, because if you can catch it early, like what are my signs of burnout? What are my signs of overstress? Then you can catch it early, and then the impact obviously will be much less.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about those things because I have ADHD, and so I already struggle a little bit with focusing and, sleeping at a reasonable time. And so it's very interesting though, because for the longest time, I never really paid too much attention to it, but the amount of like sleep that I get and then the amount of stress that I find myself under when I am getting very stressed, I notice that it becomes harder for me to focus, and I'm noticing that I'm struggling with it a lot more. And it's always like, even if I'm on like my medication, sometimes it still is like that. And it's, I don't think I ever really kind of put the two and two together of like how stress can affect also like your, cognitive perception, how you can be able to focus and perceive things around you.
Totally. These are slightly different things, but when you come back to the 5-point freeze, when you get into that mode, so this is a version of that, I would say, your body says, hey, we don't need to be solving any math problems right now. We need to keep you alive. So it kind of, I think, forces you into sort of a shutdown. And that's when you need to listen to it, because that's what your body needs. I often tell people, hey, if you're like daydreaming about things, if you're wishing for things, you're just feeling these desires, it's probably an indication of what you might be needing. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to go and cheat on my spouse because I'm feeling like I want a thrill, right? It's like, oh gosh, I'm like having these dreams. I might need a thrill. Oh, maybe I need something new in my life. Or mine is always like, I'm thinking about the places I want to visit, and it's like, because I need a break. I need a calm. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. It's like, I need quiet and calm, and I need nobody to ask me for anything. So listen to those things when you can, right? But your body will tell you. It's very cool. Your body will tell you what you need if you listen.
Interesting.
Yeah, which again is probably so similar to your work, right?
It is. Yeah. If you start paying attention to your body and you're like, okay, hey, you start realizing you're dehydrated, and then you drink some water, and then you realize, oh shoot, I'm also very hungry now. And it's just, you don't always realize that the two are connected. If you're dehydrated, you're going to be less hungry. And so then once you start hydrating, it's like, oh shoot, now I'm hungry as well. And so, even though that's not necessarily the mental aspect, hydration is just one of those things that also plays a huge part, even in your, your mental state. So, yeah, it is really cool how the body connects the physical and the mental all together.
There's a really famous, that's a kind of weird way to put it, trauma book called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about, it's super heady. I wouldn't say it's an average read for everybody, but I would say that it is true. Right, it's true. Our body holds our trauma. Our body holds our body. Anyways, Same thing we're kind of talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very good book. And I forget who, do you remember who it's by? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Gotcha. That is a name.
But,
but it is a very good book. I mean, I haven't personally read like from front to back, but it's a book that my wife has read like that just because it's, kind of along in her field a little bit. And it's really fascinating. And I mean, she's obviously talked to me about it a lot. So it's very fascinating to hear like how trauma really affects your body and how it'll block things out. And then, you could be doing a certain type of exercise and all of a sudden you start having an attack and it's like, oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild stuff.
That's why we need it all. That's why you need the mental health, the physical health, the emotional health.
Yeah. It is very important to keep your whole body balanced. If you want to, I don't know. I'm always a big fan of taking care of your mental health. That's something that I always work with my clients on as well. As I'm always like, hey, like I have a client right now that has just like he's moving. He just had a kid. He lost a family member, and he's just not sleeping well either. And I'm like, dude, you've got so much going on right now. Like I'm not as worried about you making it into the gym every day. I'm more worried about you. Okay, let's work on your sleep. Make sure that you're drinking water and just really taking care of yourself.
Yeah, yes. Start at the basics. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want you to have to try and look for the end of the book if you haven't even started it. So.
Yes.
Awesome. So I do have one more question for you. Kind of along that, obviously the mental health still, but what are some healthy ways that you have suggested for people to process their emotions instead of suppressing them?
There's it's a nursery rhyme, but it's also a book, and it's going on a bear hunt. And at one point, the very end of it, look it up. At the very end of it, they're talking about like you can't go over this. I don't remember what it is. You can't go under it. You can't go around it. You got to go through it. And that's such a good metaphor of you've got to experience. You've got to allow yourself to connect to emotions. Now, that doesn't mean like you're going to go do a training session with somebody and you just had, a difficult morning or whatever. That doesn't mean you can't shelf that temporarily to be professional. But it does mean at some point, like, I'm going to spend some time in my car just thinking about it, or I'm going to cry, or I'm going to journal. Processing can be so many things. It just has to be done. And processing really is just allowing you to think, and then with that comes the feeling. Maybe I'm going to put on a sad song. I'm just going to feel it all. And that's the main thing, is just giving yourself permission to feel. I think a lot of times people, especially people that experience depression, they get worried. If I feel it, I'm going to get stuck there. And that's actually the opposite of what's true. We're so afraid of them, we push them away, that then they boomerang back. When in reality, this is really true of grief too. If we are allowing ourselves to invite it in a way that's manageable, meaning again, like, okay, I'm really overwhelmed. Okay, now I'm gonna go watch my favorite show. But I allowed myself time to like connect with myself. So there's a really good book that the title has flown from my mind. But I got it free from the nonprofit I work at. I also work in a nonprofit, and it was one of those like, oh, I guess I'll read it, have it. And it actually was very good. He has an acronym, RULER, and each part of that is speaking to emotional literacy. So it's recognizing emotion, understanding emotion. I can't remember what all the other ones are. I'm going to probably get them wrong. But, man, I wish I could remember the book off the top of my head. But if anyone in your comments asks about it, I can get back to you. But the point is, like, it's a process. You got to understand emotions. You have to understand your emotions. You have to understand how you express emotions. And also, processing doesn't mean big expression. You can process quietly. You can process alone. You can process without tears even. Nothing's wrong with, it's not a way to do it as long as you do it, which is vague. But what I would say for somebody who is like, I feel so emotionally constipated, I don't know how to connect to myself, I would say, okay, spend 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, set a reasonable amount of time for yourself. Give it a parameter so you don't get freaked out about it. Like, well, I guess I'll be here for 6 hours feeling my emotions. And then I would say, just, I don't know, pick a topic, something that has come up lately that can evoke emotion, and just think through it. And maybe even ask yourself, even looking up feelings vocabulary and like, what of these do I feel right now? So you just got to go through it. Can't go around.
And so you were saying what was that book called? The bear one. What was the title of it?
It's Going on a Bear Hunt. It's
Going on a Bear Hunt. Okay.
A little children thing.
Yeah, I've never heard that one before. So that is interesting. I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm a child at heart, and so I love those types of books. But no, I think that honestly, with the whole, it's a vague statement that you had made. I think that's probably the best way to put it, though, because a lot of times, similar to the fitness industry, your body is your own. It's different than everyone else's, so there's no one way that is going to work for every single person. And so I think when it comes to processing emotions, that's going to look differently for one person than it would for the next.
My husband, he had a really big loss in a cousin, like last year, and he had a couple of big cries about it.
Yeah.
That kind of was it for him. Like, and he really did. He's not a stuffer, generally. So it could be that. And then allowing, like, I say too, like, if feelings come, just try to allow, like, I'm just going to sit this for a couple minutes. Mm-hmm. And then usually you do, and then you start thinking about something else, and then you move on. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just allowing yourself that time. I think that's huge. And I think that was, honestly, for me, that was the one thing that I feel like I didn't understand for a very long time, was like, okay, what does it mean to process my emotions? Like, I don't want to just be thinking about the past. Like, that's just going to make me sad and depressed. So you end up just blocking it out.
Yeah.
But then I think you had mentioned it. You kind of just keep coming back to it.
Yeah. And be like, man, that was a really hard thing I went through. Or like, it's a really sad thing. And then you just kind of feel it. But that is a perfect, like, close the loop of where we started of, well, that's what you go to therapy for. Like, let me go to therapy. That thing keeps making me feel sad every time I think about it. And I'm like, really sad. Okay, well, maybe I should go and talk to a professional. Like, and also, it's not like you're going to be laying on the couch in this weird position. Someone's going to be standing behind you with a clipboard. It's like it's a cool person to talk through something with, which I would also suggest if you're also very freaked out of emotions. I know this would be a big step, but then go to therapy and just talk about your emotions. Just be like, I'm here to learn about my emotions. I guarantee you will be able to do it there with your guide, your therapeutic guide.
Yes. Well, and so actually I think that kind of brings up a good little, like, closing point here. When it comes to therapy, my wife has actually, I think, kind of encouraged me on this before. I've had therapists that I feel like I didn't connect with very well. So I guess coming from your perspective as a therapist, how do you feel when a client is like, hey, I don't know if this is working out, like, I need a different therapist? Like, is that something that you take personal? Or is it like, no, hey, that's totally understandable. Like, again, it's different for every single person. So not every client meshes well with every single, like, trainer or therapist.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it doesn't. I don't have any feelings about it. I'm a human, and it is a form of rejection. But then you quickly have to remind yourself it's not about me. It's about them. Yeah. And I will say, though, I don't hear that very often from clients, not because I'm an exceptional therapist per se, but because they usually will just ghost you.
Gotcha.
And you never know why they don't come back. But I do. That is something. This is a good thing for your listeners. If you are having thoughts or feelings about therapy or your therapist, please voice them. We only know what we know. We only do the best we can. And I love it when a client has had therapy before, because they at least have some frame of reference of what they liked or didn't like. And then at least have a starting point of like, great, we're never going to do that thing because you hated that before. But no, that's never something you should ever worry about your therapist taking. I mean, their feelings need to be dealt with by them. You as the client, you just be honest. But I will say there can be a really great benefit to meeting with someone who challenges you, or you kind of feel a little like, So I'd say before you just, bye, I'm going to ghost you, just have some, maybe talk to somebody in your life, or even to the therapist. That would be even better. And just explore why you feel that resistance, because sometimes that's your own stuff and actually would be really good for you to continue to work out with that person. But also, it's better that you go to therapy than you're like, now I have to work this out. Then just pick another therapist and move on. Like, keep going. But it could be a cool thing.
That's good. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that is some very good insight, because I know, just coming from even just the fitness background, like, not every client meshes the best with trainers, and so sometimes you want to swap them out, and a lot of times clients can feel very awkward about that. And so I think it's good for all of us to be able to understand, like, hey, one, try and face those emotions, talk to the person about it first, and then from there you guys can always work out what the next steps are.
Yeah, it's a really good practice in assertiveness for a client to have that very uncomfortable conversation with a therapist who, whether you realize it or not, you see as like a what's the word I'm looking for, but as a higher up kind of a person, like you see in a certain way. And so it's really weird to have to be like, I don't really know if I like meeting with you anymore, but also so good to grow in that skill, because most of us are all way too nice and have hurting. So it could be a really good thing, even if you just have that conversation to say, I'm going to do this so I can grow in my assertiveness. No other reason. It could be good for you.
Oh, gosh, that hits a little close to home for me. Assertiveness is the one thing that Grace keeps telling me I need to work on, so I'm like, oh no. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and doing this, and just being willing to share your knowledge and inspiration for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me say so many things, and I hope it was helpful to somebody, and that you will maybe take a step into therapy, towards therapy, whatever that looks like for you. If you honestly do it with an open heart and you find a person you connect with, it can change your life. So let it.
Yeah.
Let it.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more, honestly. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.